So in this video, we are going to talk about how to use nutrients to get results with your health. And I really wanted to talk to you guys about this today. Number one, because it won the poll of the week. But number two, because I see this go wrong in so many different ways with people's health. After working with hundreds of people, I see people on hundreds and thousands of different kinds of supplements. And often the supplements are all doing totally different things. They're canceling each other out. They're working on the same mechanism, different mechanisms, and people end up using supplements and different nutrients as polypharmacy. So I want to talk about a couple things. I really want to teach you guys some tools so that you can help determine this in your own life. So number one, how to determine that you need a supplement, how to get it in the diet, and then how to get it in a supplement. And the thing that we really need to focus on is that, I'm going to adjust this a little bit, is that body processes simply cannot occur without having good nutrients on board. We can't have healthy hormones, we can't have good energy levels, we're not going to make healthy babies if we don't have good nutrients on board. So nutrients are really the driver for everything. And if you guys see me looking over here, it's because I have my notes so we stay on track, which is always super important. So I want to jump right in and start teaching you these things. So we're going to start with number one, which is how to determine whether you actually need a supplement. And before we get too far into this, none of this is medical advice. Talk to your doctor that you have, not me if I'm not your doctor. But how you determine whether you need a supplement. So some of you guys have heard me talk about this a lot, but there's 3 different ways that I determine this with people. So number one would be a blood test. Number 2 would be a micronutrient test. And then number 3 would be symptoms. So I'm going to walk you through what I mean by that. So a blood test can be a blood test like vitamin D, vitamin B, folate, vitamin B6. But the issue with blood tests is that many blood tests are not perfect. And a lot of nutrients don't actually have a gold standard for measurement. We've developed the technology to figure out how to test these nutrients in the blood, but we don't have like a standardized reference range or outcome studies or really a range that's going to be clinically beneficial to determine, hey, you're low or high in this nutrient. So, I think the reason for this is because our bodies are so biochemically different that standards haven't really been established, which makes total sense because our nutrient levels change a lot, especially depending on what kind of nutrient it is, whether it is a fat-soluble nutrient or whether it is a water-soluble nutrient. So a blood test, like let's pick on vitamin D, for example. Vitamin D, we have a ton of studies about. We've seen where healthy populations are. We've seen where diseased populations are. We've seen the line that you need for proper bone health. We've seen the line that you need for preventing autoimmune diseases. We've seen vitamin D correlated with inflammation and just so many different things. So that would be one that kind of is an exception to this blood test rule. And I run vitamin D on a lot of different people and we get a lot of great results. Whether you're high or low, and then we can do something about it. So that would be one example. There's a blood test for things like B12, and I'm going to harp on B12 a little bit in this video so that we can have some continuity. We can understand how this applies to, say, one nutrient, how we could apply this to more. But B12 in the blood is literally just taking a snapshot in time of the measure of B12 that's floating around in your system at that moment. But we actually have other markers that tell us whether a person is deficient in B12 or what I should say is functionally deficient in B12. And let me explain what I mean by that. So if you're what's called clinically deficient in something, you will often get the disease that is associated with a B vitamin deficiency. So we have multiple B vitamins and multiple B vitamin deficiency diseases, but they are very rare in developed countries. So I don't usually talk specifically about those. When I'm talking about vitamin deficiencies, I'm most specifically talking about a functional deficiency, which means that you are not either absorbing enough of it, you're not getting enough of it in your diet, you're not getting enough of it in your supplements, you're just essentially not getting enough of it, but you're getting some, so you're not really in the tank with your levels. It's not like you're getting a disease state from lack of that nutrient. Does that make sense? If you guys that are listening, give me a little thumbs up if that made sense. So that makes a big difference for what we're talking about, because I don't want you guys to leave this video and be like, oh, I'm deficient in all of these things, or nutrient deficiencies are common. Nutrient deficiencies, when we talk about that in the naturopathic community, we usually mean functional deficiencies. So people are not getting a consistent amount of this nutrient so that we can use it for all of our biochemical processes. It's actually very rare to be truly deficient in things. But the problem is that having a functional deficiency is still actually a pretty big deal. And it can prevent you from achieving optimal health, from getting pregnant, from having healthy hormones, from having an easy menopause, the whole thing. So, functional deficiencies might not be as serious, but you can still get a lot of symptoms from them. The other testing that I will sometimes do is a micronutrient deficiency test. And I get patients that come in and asking me, how do I test my nutrient levels? And you can do it with something called a micronutrient test. This is looking at things like all of your fat-soluble vitamins, so A, D, E, K. This is looking at things like calcium, magnesium, iron, sometimes omega-3 levels, and what else? Amino acids, mineral levels. And they can be useful for a couple of different reasons, but I more so use them as a guiding tool versus a true diagnosis of, hey, you are deficient in thiamine, or hey, you are deficient in B12, unless certain, because some of these deficiency tests are good and they have the standard of care medical lab range that you would need to diagnose a vitamin deficiency. But these micronutrient deficiency tests only tell us one piece of the puzzle. So when I'm interpreting one of those, I'm thinking, okay, what's the theme here? Is the patient all low in B vitamins? Are they all low in amino acids? What is their fatty acid index? And so it starts different layers. It gives me different layers to think about their case and compare it to their symptoms and say, okay, well, hey, they're an anxious person. They've been a vegetarian for a long time, and hey, their B vitamins are low. That makes total sense to me, because people that are more anxious tend to be better supported with B vitamins, and people that are vegetarian or vegan tend to be low in B vitamins. And so that person would be a really good fit for having some B vitamins in their diet, whether we do it through food or supplements. So nutrient testing isn't perfect. I use it as a guiding tool. The other way that I would use micronutrient testing is for someone that really wants data, especially if they are coming to see me and we're embarking on this whole health journey. They might want a test to tell them, hey, this is where I'm at and this is where I'm going. And, so we can look back a year, 6 months later and see how their nutrient levels have changed. And I enjoy doing that with patients, because sometimes it really does show us how far you've come. But sometimes what it doesn't tell us is, and I'll kind of get to this later on in the video, but your nutrient pathways biochemically in the body all affect and feed into each other. So when you're treating somebody's symptoms and trying to find the root cause and trying to fix their dysfunction, you have to go to the root source. Otherwise, people tend to push the same nutrient pathways and use the same enzymes and then put their genetics in there with how they process certain vitamins and minerals. And you tend to see the same deficiencies tend to crop up. So nutrient testing can be useful to help determine some of that, but they're not the best to really help solve the dysfunction. Say you come in and you have a B12 and a thiamine deficiency, a B complex might be a really good fit for you, but unless we think about your case a little bit more deeply and figure out, okay, why would you be deficient in B12? Because maybe that's affecting the thiamine as well, or maybe you don't eat a lot of foods that are high in thiamine. If we're not thinking about it that way, then what we'll do, or what tends to happen, is that we will put this person on high B vitamin foods and maybe B complex that has both thiamine and B12 in it, and then they, say do a lot better, or their nutrient test comes in and it looks a lot better. But then when we, change their supplement protocol or change their diet, then the pathway's gonna go right back to where it was. So that's why you need to think about all pieces of the puzzle when you're thinking about fixing nutrient deficiency. The other piece in this, besides blood testing and micronutrient testing, is symptoms. And when I sit down with patients, I think about symptoms probably the most when I'm determining when someone needs to have a vitamin supplement. It's really their symptoms plus their history plus their labs, which will give us a guiding tool. And sometimes patients are really wise and they notice things that they tend to be deficient in over time with different blood testing that they've gotten from other doctors, or when they tend to take certain supplements, they notice that they feel better, their sense of well-being goes up, their energy goes up. So you can use those types of symptoms to tell whether or not you need a supplement. And I feel like I've been talking a lot about needing a supplement, and let's define need a little bit here. Because the way that I think about it is you're either deficient in a vitamin based on a blood test, or because you show signs that you would benefit if you were on that supplement. So needing a supplement is either because you tested low on that vitamin, or because you show signs that you would benefit from taking the supplement. And I know that's a little bit of a broad approach, but the reason why I say it like that is because when we're testing someone's blood, there's usually multiple different ways that we can tell whether someone is deficient in a vitamin. And that is really important because we don't want to just give you the whole kitchen sink when we are building your diet and giving you some supplements to take for a period of time. We don't want you to have to take a ton of things. I want to give you a couple of things, check in on your physiology, and then see how you do. So let's pick on a vitamin example. So there are multiple different ways in the blood to determine whether you're deficient in a vitamin or not. So let's pick on B12, because we're going to pick on B12 a lot for tonight because he's a perfect one to pick on. And I feel like most of you know what B12 is because it's a buzzword. We do B12 vitamin shots at my clinic. A lot of other clinics have done B12 shots, and most of you have gotten one of those. So you have, some experience of B12. But when I'm assessing B12 levels for a person, there's a couple of different lab results that will help paint the picture of whether that person is deficient in B12 and how much and what pathways are being affected by having this deficiency. So that would, first of all, we would start to look at just their B12 level in the blood. But that only tells us how much B12 is in the blood floating around at that moment. That doesn't really tell us what's getting into the tissue, which makes a big difference because you can have a lot of a nutrient in the serum, but your cells aren't able to uptake it due to receptor issues, different issues with your genetics or biochemistry, ways that you circulate the vitamin. I mean, so many different things. So I'll look at the patient's B12 level and just see where are they in the reference range. Are they on the lower side of the reference range? Are they on the higher end of the reference range? And fun fact for all of you guys that have had your B12 tested, and you're going to go after this video and go check out the number. If you are taking any sort of B12 from the outside in, then that can also falsely elevate your B12 level when we take it on a blood test. So on the lab that I use, the range is greater than 2,000 is considered really high B12. And a lot of my patients come back as being high on B12 if they're taking B12, like if they're taking a multi, if they got a vitamin shot or an IV anytime recently, if they're doing a sublingual, if they're doing a vitamin powder that has B12. And so that is totally normal, and that is not a reason to discontinue your B12 supplement at all. So not a cause for concern, but people can be anywhere in that B12 range. They can be low, they can be high, they can be in the middle. But I will also look at an MMA for these people. MMA stands for methylmalonic acid, and it is a byproduct of B12 metabolism in the body. And if you don't have enough B12, then you can't clear your MMA. So MMA tends to build up, and then we can see it on the blood test. So I'll check their MMA. I'll also check homocysteine levels. Homocysteine is a marker that tends to go up if you are deficient in B12, folate, B6, or riboflavin, which is vitamin B2. So multiple different causes of high homocysteine, and a couple other in there that I'm not even going to touch on. But also the MCV in somebody's red blood cell panel on a CBC. So MCV stands for mean corpuscular volume. It is a measure of red blood cell volume. And what you need when you're building new red blood cells is you need DNA expression to have the DNA to create the red blood cells so that you can have oxygen carrying capacity and that you can live and build new red blood cells. And we make new red blood cells all the time. They only live 120 days. So that's why we measure them in the blood so often to check in how they are. But their MCV is a measure of their volume. So if you don't have enough B12 or folate running around, then it's harder to make the cells. And so the cells tend to look kind of big and they're just not shaped as they should. So their volume goes up. And so that can be indicative of a B12 deficiency. Really, really common. So just to pick on B12, I look at their B12 level, I look at their homocysteine, I look at their MMA, and I look at their MCV on a lab. And, if all four are off, then that increases the likelihood that they're actually deficient in B12 or that the patient would benefit with B12. So you can see how this is a multiple lens approach to this. And let's talk about food sources for vitamins, because I wanted to tell you guys today about how to determine if you need a supplement. So we are kind of going through those. And then let's talk about how to get it in the diet, because that would be the next one. And then we'll talk about how to get it in a supplement. So how do we get vitamin B12 from food? So vitamin B12 is a nutrient that you pretty much only get from animal products. It doesn't exist in the plant world. And we don't make B12 in our bodies except for a very, 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 very minuscule amount by certain types of bacteria in your gut, which you might not even have, depending on your microbial diversity. So we can't even consider that to be a contributor. So if you are not a person that eats animal products, and these are animal products like seafood, steak, liver, eggs, dairy, cheese. I know a lot of you guys like cheese. That's what everybody tells me. Don't take my cheese away. It's okay. We're not taking your cheese away today. We're just talking about B12 in cheese, which is very, very helpful. So if you're a person that doesn't eat animal foods, then you'll most likely need a supplement. And the interesting thing about being vegan or vegetarian is that a lot of those individuals, they don't supplement. And at least this is what I see in my practice, is that they tend to come in and see me, 10 years, 15, 20 years into being vegetarian or vegan, and their energy is just in the tank and they're really not feeling well. And some of that is due to B vitamin deficiency, because we don't get all of our B vitamins from plants. We get a lot of them from animal products. So, this even includes seafood, you guys. So even if you're not a beef person or a dairy person, you can still get a lot of nutrients from fish. And, B12 is actually high in salmon and even tuna. So you don't even need to eat the fishy fish to get any sort of B12, which is great. Symptoms are key. Let's talk about that. So symptoms are key. Often it can be hard to determine whether symptom is from a vitamin or mineral deficiency or whether it is from some sort of disease state. So that is why we look at so many in-depth things. So one thing that I always do with patients is do a 24-hour diet recall. And then sometimes I'll have them write down their diet for about a week. And the more honest they are with me, the quicker that we kind of get on top of determining whether their nutrition needs to be improved or whether it's doing really well or what we need to do with their diet. So from that information, I'm able to see, what foods that people tend to eat and gravitate towards, because we all have our likes and dislikes. And, for instance, if we're talking about the mineral zinc, zinc is actually really high in pumpkin seeds. So if I'm doing a diet recall on somebody who tends to eat a lot of pumpkin seeds, then my suspicions of having a deficiency in zinc are going to go down, because I'm going to know that they probably have a lot of zinc in because they're eating a lot of pumpkin seeds. Same thing for people if they're really into oysters. Zinc is really high in oysters. So people have certain tendencies, and that can dictate which kind of vitamins we recommend. And that's because we're humans and we're habitual beings. So we like to eat the same things kind of all the time. I don't recommend that, but it's just how a lot of us are wired. So having a more varied diet is probably the best way to have your diet, whether you're eating paleo, keto, vegetarian, vegan, whatever it is. Increasing diversity in your diet is good, not only for making sure that you have enough vitamins and minerals around, but also to support your gut microbiome. And that is a whole other topic, which we are going to cover on another video. So if you have certain deficiencies, that can help dictate which vitamins we recommend. So not all vitamin and mineral deficiencies actually manifest with something super tangible, but a couple of them do. So a couple things that come to mind is if you guys have ever seen the little white dots on your nails, that can be a sign of zinc deficiency. And they can also occur if you tend to hit your fingers on something. That whiteness will form because of trauma, but it can also be a sign of a zinc deficiency. Different ways that we tend to assess nutrients has to do with like your hands and your nails, even places like under the eye for assessing for iron deficiency. You can look in somebody's mouth and look at somebody's tongue and see what the tongue looks like, and that can give us clues to deficiency. So a couple things that I look for are when you pull down the bottom of your bottom eyelids, you can see the pink color in there. You really want to pull it down a little bit more and then go into the mirror and see what that looks like in there. But if it looks really pale, you could be deficient in iron. And iron's a really important mineral for all of us, especially us ladies, because we have periods each month, so we're always going to lose a certain amount of iron, unless you're post-menopause. I also will always look at people's nails, and this can be tricky, especially if your nails are painted like mine are. So often I will ask people to come into their visits at least when I first start working with them with having their nails not painted. because we can get different things on our nails. So let me use this one for an example. So let's see, how would I do this? So you can have vertical ridges on your nails. You can have horizontal ridges on your nails. And this is really different, or I should say, sorry, I was getting a notification, I was distracted. Whether it's vertical or horizontal, that changes what it means. So, for example, the vertical ridges, especially if it's, wish I had a picture example for you guys, especially if it is ridgy, like small, teeny tiny ridges that go the whole length of the nail this way, that can be a sign of mineral deficiency. You can also have lines that are horizontal that are indicative of mineral deficiency. It really depends on what the lines look like too. So I'm just describing a line that goes up or a line that goes over, but sometimes people have pitting in their nails or really deep lines or starting and stopping of their nail, and those can be indicative of other issues that you would need to get checked out. But your nails can tell you a lot of things, especially the consistency. So whether they are strong or bendable or breakable or really thick, that tells me information. Let's see what else. How you digest your food will give me some information about how your nutrient levels are doing. And a couple of things will probably come to mind as we're talking. So, probably another good example is if you're a person who tends to be anxious, magnesium is generally a good fit for those types of people because of different biochemical pathways that it supports. And that's why we do a history on everybody before we do supplements. Really important. Let's talk about, if we're going to take a supplement, how do we get it in a supplement? There's a lot of info on the interwebs about supplements and what the heck to do with them, and it's kind of ridiculous. So let me simplify it for you, because there are multiple forms of vitamins, and a lot of different vitamins and minerals come in different vitamin forms. So let's use B12 as an example here as well. So the different forms of supplements are capsule, a tablet, a lozenge, a liquid, a powder, a gummy, and an injection. So I'll say that one more time. Capsules, tablets, lozenge, liquid, chewables or gummies, powders, and injections. So that's usually about all of the ways that you can get a vitamin in supplement-wise. Not every supplement can be made in every single form. One example would be that folate. It's really hard to get folate into a liquid form. It takes a lot of effort to keep it in a liquid form. So most folates come in a lozenge, or they come in a powder, or they come in a capsule. But B12 is one of the vitamins that can come in pretty much all of those: capsule, tablet, lozenge, liquid, and beyond, all the way up to an injectable. So that's really cool. And the way that we give a vitamin or mineral supplement, or I should say, determining what supplement form that you need, is mostly based on your history of, how do you absorb things overall? How is your gut health? What is your transit time? Are you pooping every day? And a couple of other things. Most people I will recommend capsules for, but not everybody will need capsules. Not everybody will need liquids. And it also depends on how quick you want the delivery method to be. So let's go back to B12 for a second. If we give B12 in a powder, like B12 that's in a smoothie powder, or a capsule, those are pretty much going to absorb at a similar rate because they're both going to be a powder form in your stomach when it starts to get broken down. But if we look at something like a tablet, how they make tablets, you guys, is they take all of the vitamin stuff and they put it in a mold, and then they have to use this giant machine to apply a lot of pressure, and pressure usually comes with heat. And it essentially squishes all of the stuff into this tablet form, so there's no capsule. So everything is just essentially bonded and squished together under very, very high force. And that is the reason why I don't like tablets, is because most people that I work with, we're trying to get them results fast because they've been feeling crappy for so long, or they have compromised digestive systems. So it's actually going to be really hard to break down the tablet because all that stuff is so stuck together. It's not like a capsule, where a capsule is going to stay intact with the veggie capsule, and it's going to go, or whether it's a gelatin capsule, and it's going to go down your esophagus and into your stomach, and then it's going to dissolve. And that's exactly where we wanted it to go. So a tablet is going to stay in your stomach a lot longer, and you might end up pooping out more of the tablet than you actually wanted. I see this a lot. So tablets require a lot of stomach acid to break down, and I know a lot of people that don't have good stomach acid because stress depletes your stomach acid making ability. And I don't know about you, but I've definitely been stressed a couple of times in my life, and I know that's affected my digestion. So in general, go home, if you're not home already, and look in your medicine cabinet. And if you are seeing most of your supplements in a tablet form, you need to switch it up. I'm trying to think. There are very few things that I recommend in a tablet. I have a couple favorite immune support products that are in a tablet. But I guess the other thing to mention would be there's differences in tablets. There's tablets that dissolve and they're more chalky, and there's tablets that are really smushed together and are more waxy. The tablets that are more chalky, those really, most people don't have an issue with that. A good example of that would be like an ibuprofen or a baby aspirin, where it's got that chalky, kind of like Smartie candy type of texture. Those are dissolved really quickly. If you've ever let one stay in your mouth for a little bit too long, you know what I mean. So there's lots of different forms of these supplements, and that will dictate how fast we absorb it, whether it's a good fit for us. To pick on B12 some more, if I want B12 to have a really quick effect, sometimes I'll dose it sublingually, because under your tongue, lingual is tongue, under your tongue, we have, you guys can do this at home in the mirror, we have a ton of, I don't know if you can see it, we have a ton of little blood vessels that are supplying our tongue with blood flow and taking it away. And you can look under the mirror and see these kind of bluish things kind of in the tissue of your tongue. And if we put it under our tongue in there, then the nutrient is going to be absorbed really quickly through the mucosa covering those veins, and it's going to go directly into your system. So that can be one really effective way to get things in while bypassing the digestive system. But you can't deliver everything sublingually. Not everything absorbs super well sublingually. So if I want to get the tissue levels up the fastest, the thing that I do the most is injectables or IVs, because that gets everything into the tissue really, really quick, because it's 100% absorbed and there's literally no gut use at all. Totally bypasses the gut. But capsules in general, I would say, are my go-to because they're readily available. Most people can swallow a capsule, or I should say most adults. And unless you have a serious gut issue, you can usually break down a veggie capsule. So I prefer capsules, but whenever I'm working with someone, I always ask them, like, hey, do you prefer capsules, or do you prefer liquids? Do you prefer a powder? And hi, Dr. Faith. And not everybody wants to do a capsule. Some people are more compliant with a liquid form, so we'll do that. The only thing that I'll say about liquids is that whenever we are taking a vitamin and we're putting it in a liquid, there has to be some sort of solvent or some sort of thing that's keeping the vitamin actually in suspension and in the solution. And so they use a lot of different crappy ingredients to do that. So not all liquid vitamins are better. Sometimes it's way cleaner to do a capsule, even though for some people it seems to be counterintuitive, but now you know. So liquids are not necessarily a better choice. Capsules can be really, really great. So let's explore this idea about how to get results, because I've been doing some talking about how we even determine that you need supplements. And I would like to mention, before we get too far, that supplements are tools. Supplements are tools. They are not Band-Aids. They are not Band-Aids. So, tools, the purpose of tools is to help you do something faster or more efficiently, more quickly. Tools don't replace the thing that you're working on. They help get you to a better result. So, if you're using supplements to get results, you need to stop using them as a Band-Aid, and you need to back up and go to the first couple of steps, which is, actually doing some testing and really evaluating your diet and your lifestyle. So that was coming to mind recently for me because I listened to this podcast about greens powder. And if you've been following me at all, I don't talk about greens powder pretty much at all, because I don't really recommend greens powder for people. And the reason why is because greens powder is very, very processed, and it's often really, really high in things like heavy metals, pesticides, other toxins, and it's just way less bioavailable than, say, eating a salad. And one big thing is that these companies that make these powders, they're out to make a buck. They're really not super caring about what health goal they help you to achieve, or whether your health is really better by buying their product. And a lot of companies are just not transparent with their sourcing at all, and they won't give you their certificate of testing if you ask them, which is very concerning to me. And the problem is that, I'm a millennial, and I'm subject to all the cute marketing schemes that are out there, and I like pretty things like all of us humans do. And so having a cute label is often, a really compelling way to draw somebody in and say, oh, this product looks great. Look, they support fair trade. They, got this organic ingredient. This part of their manufacturing is better. But a lot of those claims are totally empty, and they don't actually hold up and give you a quality product. So, I harp on this greens powder idea because I get a lot of questions about it, and I see greens powder become a really big crutch for some people. So much so that they don't include vegetables in their diet. They just do greens powder, and they are 100% not interchangeable at all. So you would be much better served to committing to eat a green salad every single day and buy different greens at the store each week to vary it up, then you would be doing a greens powder. If we're thinking about supplements as tools, greens powder would be a tool for a specific period of time to supplement your diet when you're maybe not getting enough vegetables, like if you're in college, if you're a student, or if you're on vacation, or if you're traveling a lot. But because of the issues with heavy metals and pesticides and other toxins in these greens powders, and because you don't really know what the heck is in this, I don't necessarily recommend it for women that are pregnant. I don't necessarily recommend it for women consistently, or the men in our life consistently, or even children. There's very few times that I do recommend it. It's, usually college, vacation, or traveler is when I recommend it, but it's really not a replacement for something that you could easily be doing, anyways. So get the greens in, don't rely on the greens powders. Let's talk about a second example, which is minerals. I find a lot of people are mineral deficient in my practice, and the reason why is because we are so stressed as a society that we tend to use up our minerals really quickly to make our stress hormones, and we're not replenishing the minerals, and we don't eat a diet that supports mineral replenishment. And often the women that I work with have some sort of exercise routine. So they are sweating out their minerals and losing their minerals every time they exercise. So, put all of that together. People are stressed, exercising, and not having a supportive enough diet for minerals, and we get mineral deficiencies. And mineral deficiencies can be, pick a mineral. I mean, it could be any of them. And minerals are really, really important for building healthy bones, preventing osteopenia and osteoporosis, for supporting your mood, for supporting your hair, skin, nails, big. And minerals also come in many forms. And so some people are more deficient in the macro minerals like magnesium, calcium, sodium, and then other people are more deficient in the micro minerals like selenium or zinc. And that is really based on your habits. But just to talk about some of those for a second, selenium is really, really important for your thyroid hormone conversion, so converting T4 to T3 in your body so that you can have active thyroid hormone, so that you can have a healthy metabolism. And zinc is really, really fantastic for supporting fertility, for supporting any sort of period problems, and supporting hormones for women. So if you are low in selenium or zinc, then that can affect all of those things and more. Another one that is very, very common is magnesium deficiency. And magnesium deficiency is so common, and you hear us naturopathic doctors talking about it so much because magnesium is used in over 300 plus biochemical reactions in the human body. And that's a lot, you guys. That is a lot. And so if somebody is taking or is not taking minerals, or I should say really isn't having any sort of dietary intake of minerals, and one of the best ways to get magnesium, you guys, is green leafy vegetables, because the chlorophyll molecule, it has its own little molecule of magnesium right in the middle. So you can even supplement with chlorophyll drops to get some natural magnesium, which is awesome. I also really like to use chlorophyll for blood building, and my iron deficient ladies can be very helpful because the chlorophyll molecule is very similar to a porphyrin ring, which is really important in your red blood cells for carrying iron. Fun fact. And let's see, what else would I want to say about minerals? One interesting thing about magnesium is that magnesium and potassium and sodium all work together to create healthy blood pressure. So diuretics, what's really common is that they will actually have you lose magnesium, and you need that to have a healthy blood pressure. So that can actually make your blood pressure worse over time and cause more hypertension. And that kind of segues into this idea that I really wanted to address, that nutrients in general should not be taken singly. They should be taken together. And the reason why is because nutrients are synergistic. Nutrients work together. So for instance, like we were just talking about blood pressure, magnesium, potassium, sodium, they all work together to create healthy blood pressure levels. And again, calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, all great for bone health. Vitamin D, K, and vitamin A all work together because they're fat-soluble vitamins. And so their balance within each other is really important. And that is another reason why instead of giving someone mega doses of B12 or B6 or something like that, I will usually give them a really, really high quality B complex so that all of the B vitamins can work together and there's not going to be any, deficiencies in all of the B vitamin pathways and processing the vitamins. So nothing, because you have different B vitamin pathways and sometimes you can get stuck somewhere because you don't have a cofactor that you need to get to the next step in the process. So if we dose these vitamins together, it's just better long term. So somebody was asking, can you recommend a mineral replacement? So welcome, Tony. I am a big fan of electrolytes because they have a lot of the macro minerals. If someone needs micro mineral support, then I usually will recommend something like a Himalayan Soleil water, which I've done a post on. So go over to Instagram and take a look at that on my feed. I'm also a fan of doing sometimes just mineral capsules for people that are really deficient in minerals. But I'm always changing people's diets to get minerals into their like daily reality. But they can be very life-changing for people. One thing that I see a lot is people struggling with urinary frequency, especially if they increase their water intake. And that is really commonly due to the fact that you don't have enough minerals on board in your body to really hold the water in. So the water, flushes out of you too quickly and you have to pee all the time, which is super annoying, right? But it can be due to the fact that you're actually low in minerals. So another thing that I recommend would be trace mineral drops. Those are really, really fantastic. I usually recommend the Concentrace brand. There's lots of good brands. Yeah, it's totally you. Yeah, fun fact. So minerals, most people can take them. They're really benign. Of course, ask your doctor whether it's right for you. You can get them almost anywhere. There's lots of good products out there. Probably my favorite electrolyte powder that I wish everybody would take, 1 scoop every morning, is the Electrolyte Synergy powder that I am just obsessed with for my patients and for myself. It has so many good minerals in there, plus vitamin C and plus other things that support your mitochondria. So I'm a big fan of that. That product is by Designs for Health. And lastly, let's talk about why these nutrients are important, because I can stand here all day until I'm blue in the face and talk about nutrients, but we use nutrients because they support all of our biochemistry, and our biochemistry is why everything works in our body. It's like these little chemical reactions that add up to what we feel on a whole as wellness or feeling crappy or feeling tired. It's these little biochemical reactions in our body that are constantly going. And let's see. I forgot my whiteboard marker. Oh no. Hold on. Let's do this. I have a blank sheet of paper here. Okay. So when we have a biochemical reaction, think back to high school chemistry, you guys. We have this. It's going to be backwards, but we have A has to go to B, B has to go to C, C has to go to D. And the thing that helps the chemical reaction go is called an enzyme. Enzyme, E-N-Z for enzyme. And then enzymes, they work because they have cofactors. And cofactors, and I spelled it wrong, but it's okay. Cofactors are things like zinc, magnesium, B6, B12, B1, B3, everything. Oh, like minerals are hugely cofactors. All the different vitamins are cofactors. So the cofactors helps the enzyme move the biochemical reaction along. So say you're low in, one of my favorite ones is molybdenum. Molybdenum is a little tiny mineral that nobody talks about, but is really amazing for helping you detox your sulfites that you get in things like wine or dried fruit. And that enzyme is what we call a molybdenum dependent enzyme. So if you are low in molybdenum, then you're not going to process your sulfites very good because the enzyme function is impaired. So this is why we think so deeply about what kind of nutrients are you getting in, because say all of the sulfite processing over your whole body is really poor, then that's going to affect how you deal with certain types of foods. Or say we apply this to another reaction, say you lack a lot of the B vitamins that is necessary to recycle glutathione. Glutathione is an antioxidant in our body that helps put out a lot of inflammation and a lot of fires and helps to neutralize free radicals. Say you are low in all of the cofactors that help you make glutathione, like different amino acids, or you are deficient in a lot of the things that help recycle the glutathione molecule. Once it's made and used, it gets recycled consistently, so it can be reused. If you're deficient in a lot of those vitamins, you're not going to recycle your glutathione as well, and your body's going to have to work harder and harder and harder to make the glutathione that it needs to put out the fires that naturally occur every day in your body with different toxins we're exposed to and other crap. So lack of nutrients makes your body work harder on a biochemical level in a big way, and that translates up to how you feel up here as a whole. So the biochemistry really matters, and the reason why we eat is number one, to get fuel, and number two, to get nutrients. So fuel is either glucose or ketones. We use those as the primary fuel sources. And then nutrients and minerals, vitamins and minerals. Those are literally the reasons why we eat, you guys. And so say you're getting, standard American diet is the perfect example of this. Say you're getting consistent fuel with calories, but you're not getting consistent nutrients, you're going to suffer. Say you are getting consistent nutrients, like you're eating a really great diet, like a raw vegan diet, but you're training a lot and you're not getting enough calories, you're not getting enough fuel, then that's a problem. So we really need to have both fuel and nutrients on board, and that is what creates a healthy and sustainable diet for somebody. But as I was saying before, we all tend to have foods that we like more than others, and so we tend to have different nutrient gaps in excuse me, in our reality. So besides going to a practitioner, there are ways that you can figure out if you are taking enough, or I should say, if your diet is supporting you with different nutrient levels. There's a resource online, worldshealthiestfoods.org, and they have this really awesome vegetable nutrient quiz. And so they're big at looking at all of the plant foods and seeing what makes those plant foods amazing and what their nutrient intake or nutrient composition is like, I should say. And so you can put in all of the vegetables that you eat consistently or don't eat, and well, you wouldn't put them in if you don't eat them, but you know what I mean. You can put in all of those vegetables into the quiz, and it will say, oh, it looks like you're pretty good on this nutrient, but you might not do so good in this nutrient. So it can really help give you some way to, change your diet and rotate your diet a little bit more without working with a practitioner. So that is one resource that I recommend to people. There's also some really great nutrition websites out there that will, if you type in a food, say it's, sauerkraut or beef or an egg, it will tell you, what is really high in those foods. And so you can see, oh, well, I tend to get a lot of, zinc, but I don't tend to get a lot of calcium because maybe I don't eat a lot of green vegetables or something like that. So you can think critically about it that way as well, just by looking at the different nutrition content of the whole foods that you eat every single day. Like, perfect example is if you eat orange foods like carrots, bell peppers, squash, sweet potatoes, then you're most likely not going to be deficient in vitamin A. But if you're a person that doesn't tend to eat those foods, then you could need some vitamin A in your diet, and you could do that by including those vegetables, or you could do that by including that in a multivitamin or taking a vitamin A supplement. So I hope that this all makes sense. A lot of you guys have stuck on with me for this whole video, so thank you. Any questions before I go tonight, you guys? This is a great conversation. And if not, you can DM them to me and I will address them at another time. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Dr. Meg, and I do these Instagram lives every Monday night at 5 for usually about an hour. We hang out for a while. So if you found this video useful, please share it, give it to someone that could need it, and send me questions. I welcome those, and we'll be back next week, and we will talk about another topic that you guys voted on in my stories this past 24 hours, which is awesome. So thank you for participating. Yay, I'm glad you found it interesting. Faith, can you clarify your question? And I can't make specific recommendations for individuals. That is the task of your doctor. I can make very general recommendations and educate you, but I can't make ones specifically for you. So I don't know what your question meant, but feel free to send it to me. And thanks everybody for following along. This is great. Really appreciate it. Bye everyone.